All right, let's move on to our second theory, which is the control theory. And this is much more simplified than the strain theory. The control theory believes that conformity to social norms depends on strong bonds between the individual and society. If bonds are weak, deviance is more likely to occur. The function of social bonds is to prevent deviance. And so social bonds control the behavior of people, thus preventing deviant acts. And the founder of this theory said that there are 4 basic elements of social bonds. Attachment measures our connection to others. When we are closely attached to people, we worry about their opinions of us. People conform to society's norms in order to gain approval or prevent disapproval from family, friends, and romantic partners. Commitment refers to the investments we make in the community. A well-respected local businesswoman who volunteers at her synagogue and is a member of the neighborhood block organization has more to lose from committing a crime than a woman who doesn't have a career or any kind of ties to a community. And then involvement is similar in that it is participation in socially legitimate activities which lessen a person's likelihood of deviance. Children who are members of Little League baseball teams have fewer family crises. And kids who are involved in different activities around the community tend to have a lower likelihood that they will be deviant. The final bond is belief in social values, and this is an agreement on common values in society. If a person views societal values as beliefs, he or she will conform to them. An environmentalist is more likely to pick up trash in a park because a clean environment is a social value to him. And so obviously the strength of each of these 4 in a person's life decreases the likelihood for that person to be deviant. But at the bottom line you need to know about control theory is right up here. If social bonds are weak, deviance is more likely to occur. All right. Next, we have the discussion of, is deviance innate or learned? Are some people born with stronger elements of attachment than others? And in the 1970s, some scientists believe that a certain chromosome gave people a deviant disposition. And this is 100% untrue. Deviance, just like conformity, is a learned behavior, meaning that there are not people who are born with genes that make them more likely to murder or rape someone. People learn behavior, good or bad. They learn to follow social norms, and people learn to deviate from social norms. And deviance is relative. Are some people treated more tolerantly when it comes to deviance? And we are going to talk about something known as victim discounting in just a second. Okay, the third theory to keep in mind and make note of is the differential association theory. And this is when individuals learn deviance in proportion to the numbers of deviant acts they are exposed to. And to break it down a little bit more, the ratio of deviant to non-deviant individuals. A person who knows more deviance is also more likely to be deviant. Whether the deviant behavior is practiced significantly by others. A person is more likely to copy deviant behavior from a significant other, meaning someone whose opinion of him matters more than just an acquaintance. And then the age of exposure. Younger children learn deviant behavior more quickly than older children. So if younger kids are exposed to deviance, it is more likely that that person will grow into someone who exercises deviant behavior, whereas people who are exposed to deviance at a later age tend to be less deviant. And lastly, labeling theory. Let me ask you a question, and I want you guys to think about this. If a teacher says, "You are my favorite" or "the best class ever," how does that label affect the class behavior? On the flip side, if a teacher says, "You're my least favorite class, you are the worst class I've ever taught," how does this influence how that class behaves? So how do labels affect behavior? Affect behavior. I'm sorry about all these typos. The labeling theory believes that society creates deviance by identifying Society creates deviance by identifying particular members as deviant. So labeling has 2 possible results: a self-fulfilling prophecy or overcompensating to not live down the label. So if we go back up to "You are my favorite class ever," Two results can happen as a result of that label. A self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning that the behavior of this class is continued to be good, maybe even better, because they want to fulfill or become the label that the teacher has bestowed upon them. Or a teacher might say, you guys are my favorite class ever, and then they try to overcompensate to live down the label. I made another typo. Or overcompensating to try to live down the label. So for example, if somebody is labeled the class clown, usually that student will either continue to be the class clown to live up to the label, or the behavior will be in check a little bit more and he will try to almost like strip himself of that label. Or someone who is given the label teacher's pet, he or she might continue to try to be teacher's pet, or they might actually be deviant to try to get rid of that label. So labeling theory has two ways that it can go. Self-fulfilling prophecy, I'm going to live up to my label, or I'm trying to deviate away from the label and get rid of it by acting the opposite of what it says. Apologize for all the typos on this slide. That's embarrassing. Okay, and let's see, part of labeling theory includes primary and secondary deviance. Primary deviance is a violation of norms that does not result in any long-term effects on the individual's self-image or interactions with others. Speeding is a deviant act. I'm sure we've all done it. But receiving a speeding ticket generally does not make others view you as a bad person, nor does it alter your own self-concept. Individuals who engage in primary deviance still maintain a feeling of belonging in society and are likely to continue to conform to social norms in the future. However, in some more extreme cases, primary deviance can morph into secondary deviance. And this occurs when a person's self-concept and behavior begin to change after his or her actions are labeled as deviant by members of society. The person may begin to take on and fulfill the role of a deviant as a way to act as an act of rebellion against the society that has labeled that individual as such. For example, a high school student who often cuts class and gets into fights. The student is reprimanded frequently by teachers and school staff, and soon enough he develops a reputation as the troublemaker. As a result, the student starts acting out even more and breaking even more rules. He has adopted the troublemaker label and embraced this deviant identity. And so a stigma is an undesirable trait or label that is used to characterize an individual. Another typo right there. This is so embarrassing. So a stigma is often attached to people, typically when secondary deviance is involved, but not to say that primary deviance can't carry a stigma. For example, if someone is accused of sexual harassment, oftentimes with that stigma, there comes a lot of other characterizations that are not positive. If someone is accused of being of sexual harassment, that person often is then also characterized as being creepy or weird or makes people uncomfortable or is unintelligent, and then we have stigmas that are negative and attached to that as well. Okay, last thing that you guys are going to be responsible for are the techniques of neutralization. And the techniques of neutralization we use every single day. When we, who are fully socialized and integrated in society, when we violate social norms, we know this. And because we know this, we often feel bad about it. But we don't like that feeling of feeling bad or guilty or mad or upset or disappointment. So oftentimes we try to justify or redefine our actions. So for example, anytime someone violates a social norm and then tries to redefine it by saying, well, it wasn't deviant because it wasn't my fault, that is denial of responsibility. I would say high school students use denial of responsibility every single day, multiple times. Anytime a student is tardy to my class, it's amazing because through their perspective, they are never tardy or deviant. Just, I had to go to the bathroom, the seagulls attacked me, whatever the case may be, but it never is their fault. So by redefining that and taking the onus or the responsibility off their own shoulders, they feel better about it. Denial of injury is when we say, oh, the act wasn't deviant because nothing bad resulted from it. So for example, if someone is speeding and they get called out on it, oh, but I didn't crash or anything. So by redefining deviance as having to cause something bad, that person doesn't feel that they have been deviant, so they deny injury or harm. It's called denial of injury. Denial of victim. This is when you try to remove responsibility from yourself by basically saying someone else provoked you or influenced or even forced you to do whatever act occurred. So for example, if somebody beats somebody up and is asked about why, they might say, well, he started it. He stole my girlfriend. He was talking trash. He was looking at me bad. He was mean mugging me, whatever the case may be. But by saying that someone else provoked you, that's trying to redefine your own deviant act. And then condemnation of the condemners. Holy cow, this there are a few times that this works out well. So, condemnation of the condemners. You were probably worse than you were my age. Have you guys ever gotten a bad grade on a test? And your parents are chewing you out and you say, but dad or mom, you got worse grades than I did when you were a kid. You almost try to flip the switch and take the attention off your deviance and put it back on whoever's yelling at you. Or if you get in trouble for like breaking curfew and you try to tell your parents, you were late all the time, grandma told me that you always used to sneak in. Anytime we try to turn it back on to our accuser, that's condemnation of the condemners. And lastly, appeal to higher loyalties. This is when we try to almost redefine our act as being heroic or brave. So if you're late for your own curfew because you had to take a friend home or somebody asked you for a ride, you try to dismiss your deviance by saying, but I had to help my friend. I had to drive Tiara home so she would make her own curfew. I was brave. I was loyal. And so you try to redefine it as a way that you were doing something good. And so each one of these is used every single day, and you definitely will need to know those. So if you have any questions, please email me or see me before class on Thursday.